It was a swift and bold move in response to a complex Middle East crisis which has dragged on for 6 long years. A barrage of American cruise missiles directed at a Syrian airbase after an alleged chemical attack by Syria's president against his own people just 2 days earlier.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons.
59 Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired from 2 US warships in the eastern Mediterranean towards the Shirat airbase in Homs province, which is around 100 kilometres from Khan Shaykhun, the scene of the alleged attack. President Trump says the Shirat airbase was used to launch the chemical attack against Syrian civilians. This is what prompted him to act. More than 80 people were killed and many, many more battled poisonous chemicals, probably sarin gas, unleashed on their town.
We fully support it, and the Americans believe that this action is limited. It's very narrowly focused against the airfield, the aircraft and the equipment that the Americans believe were used in the gas attack, and they have exhausted all other means.
The world is starting to see what kind of foreign policy Donald Trump intends to pursue.
I woke up, for some reason I couldn't sleep. I woke up, I saw a lot of texts on my phone. I saw the news. I cried out of joy. I jumped. I thanked God. I don't know. I was overwhelmed. We've been asking for protection. We've been asking for consequences for more than 6 years. And today, for the first time, it happened. For the very first time, we see Assad held accountable just for once, held accountable for his crimes against humanity. I was overwhelmed. I felt grateful for President Trump. I felt grateful for the United States. I felt grateful for each and every person who lobbied and called and kept on talking until someone actually listened.
There are people in America, and I hear you supportive of President Trump, and so many people are, Democrats and Republicans, but there are also people over here in America who are saying, all right, so clearly President Trump is motivated by just, as we all have compassion for these just horrible images of these babies who were killed, but at the same time, this is a man who doesn't want Syrians to come into this country with this refugee ban. I want to just play some sound. Hillary Clinton weighed in.
We cannot in one breath speak of protecting Syrian babies and in the next close America's doors to them.
Quickly, Qasim, how do you see that?
With all due respect, I didn't see each and every person who was demonstrating after the travel ban. I didn't see you 3 days ago when people were gassed to death, when civilians were gassed to death. I didn't see you in 2013 when 1,400 people were gassed to death. I didn't see you raising your voice against President Obama's inaction in Syria that let us refugees, that made us refugees get kicked out of Syria. If you really care about refugees, if you really care about helping us, please help us stay in our country. We don't want to come to the United States. We want to stay in our country. We want to stay in our country. With all due respect, this is hypocrisy. If you really care, help us stay in our country. We don't want to become refugees. We want to stay in our country. Help us establish safe zones. Help us stay safe in our country. And if you just give me a few seconds just to tell President Trump once again, please, sir, what you did was amazing. What you did was a powerful message of hope for a lot of people inside and outside of Syria.
Rescue services and medics say at least 70 people have died in Syria after a suspected gas attack in eastern Ghouta. This shocking footage released on social media appears to show young children being treated after the suspected chemical attack. There has been no independent verification of the reports, and Syrian state media denies government forces have used any chemical weapons. The US State Department says it's monitoring the situation and that Russia should be blamed if chemicals were used.
A short time ago, I ordered the United States Armed Forces to launch precision strikes on targets associated with the chemical weapons capabilities of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. A combined operation with the armed forces of France and the United Kingdom is now underway. We thank them both. Tonight, I want to speak with you about why we have taken this action. 1 year ago, Assad launched a savage chemical weapons attack against his own innocent people. The United States responded with 58 missile strikes that destroyed 20% of the Syrian Air Force. Last Saturday, the Assad regime again deployed chemical weapons to slaughter innocent civilians, this time in the town of Douma, near the Syrian capital of Damascus. This massacre was a significant escalation in a pattern of chemical weapons use by that very terrible regime. The evil and the despicable attack left mothers and fathers, infants and children thrashing in pain and gasping for air. These are not the actions of a man. They are crimes of a monster instead. The purpose of our actions tonight is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread, and use of chemical weapons. Establishing this deterrent is a vital national security interest of the United States. The combined American, British, and French response to these atrocities will integrate all instruments of our national power, military, economic, and diplomatic. We are prepared to sustain this response until the Syrian regime stops its use of prohibited chemical agents. I also have a message tonight for the two governments most responsible for supporting, equipping, and financing the criminal Assad regime. To Iran and to Russia, I ask, what kind of a nation wants to be associated with the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children? The nations of the world can be judged by the friends they keep. No nation can succeed in the long run by promoting rogue states, brutal tyrants, and murderous dictators. In 2013, President Putin and his government promised the world that they would guarantee the elimination of Syria's chemical weapons. Assad's recent attack and today's response are the direct result of Russia's failure to keep that promise. Russia must decide if it will continue down this dark path or if it will join with civilized nations as a force for stability and peace.
Overnight, airstrikes lighting up the Syrian sky. American, British, and French forces launching a joint strike offensive, destroying 3 targets. Explosions could be heard across the region. A coordinated cruise missile attack from sea and air. Retaliation for that alleged chemical weapons attack 6 days ago. The military operation planned targets, chemical weapons facilities. They targeted weapons storage units so that there would be minimal civilian casualties. Syrian television reporting this morning that 3 civilians were harmed when missiles hit a military base in Homs. Overnight, President Trump underscoring the horror of the Syrian regime's chemical weapons attack on its own people.
The evil and the despicable attack left mothers and fathers, infants and children thrashing in pain and gasping for air. These are not the actions of a man. They are crimes of a monster instead.
Syrian state media this morning saying that the scientific research center in Barza, north of Damascus, and warehouses belonging to the Syrian army and homes were among those targeted in the attack.
We've got new enhanced images before and after the strike, starting with Barza. This is the facility that Lieutenant General Kenneth McKenzie, this Joint Staff Director at the Pentagon, described as the heart of the Syrian chemical weapons program. The Pentagon says this was a center for research, development, and production of chemical weapons. 3 main buildings. The after pictures, those are the ones with the smoke rising, indicate the 3 buildings were flattened. The other targets were outside of homes, about 100 miles north of Damascus. The Pentagon says one of the targets was a facility that made sarin gas precursors and production equipment. The other, again according to the Pentagon, was a storage facility for chemical weapons as well as a command post. And again, you can identify the pictures with the after by the big plumes of smoke coming up. They appear to show the structures were flattened. That is backed up by video coming out of Syria. The buildings were targeted by 105 missiles. They now all appear to be heaps of rubble. The generals at the Pentagon say part of the decision-making was to minimize civilian casualties. Thus far, we have reports of only 3 injuries, and that was near the targets outside of homes.